Hi, I'm Liz Helfer. I'm the artist for this piece, Desire Lines, a Nonlinear Path. Yeah, so these are all pieces of windshield glass, so they're recycled, and they are in the shapes of different surveyed map land allotments that all make up one block of land, actually over in Chestnut Hill. But the piece is really about desire lines, so we have these like big primary colored lines cutting through these shapes. And they're not actually in any orientation that would be a desire line through these plots of land because there's a lot of buildings on these. But it's the idea that we like to meander through space, or we like to cut straight through it. But rarely are there ways to get through space that are the direct ways that we want. So I used to in-house all my fabrication work, but now I like to send it out of house. So these are fabricated actually at Metalworks up in Amesbury. I love those guys. Shout out to Dan. And then they're powder coated steel. And then these are actually sandwiched between 1/8" pieces of plexiglass with marine adhesive. So they're really durable and there's no like little shards of glass floating around anywhere. What I like about them is that they are lightweight enough. These are all tubing, so I can like plop them down myself, knock them into the ground. I always love showing here, and Linda Hoffman and Old Frog Pond Farm are always so welcoming to artists and a variety of different work every year, and it's really a delight to be here again.
My name's Anne, E-D-E-R is my last name, Adar, and this is my boneyard. I feel like I've pretty much always sort of mediated my life with the camera and with nature. Those are the two things that sort of get me through, and so I decided at one point I didn't really want to contribute to the glut of commodities, and everything I make now is meant to decompose. And the prints that I make from these are often also meant to decompose. Often the material suggests things to me, you know, like especially if I've got like, you know, wood or moss that just, you know, it'll just spark an idea of like, I'm like, okay, I know what this one should look like, you know. They all have their own personality that just kind of emerges while I'm working, you know. And like I say, for the most part, I'm pretty committed to working in a way that doesn't impact the natural world, but works with it, so. Yeah, the bones, you know, I mean, I do use a lot of materials that I feel like are sort of semiotically charged. I mean, we have reactions to bones, good, bad, whatever, you know, and to me, they're very beautiful, you know, the bones are. And all the bones are just found bones that I've sort of come across. So, you know, I don't know. For me, it's like a practice in letting go, you know, it's like making this thing that I know is going to disappear. Because, I mean, ultimately, everything's going to disappear. We're going to disappear. We're all ephemeral, you know? But this gives me like it's a way to really confront it, you know, be like, okay, you know, it's not going to last forever. I mean, I feel like in the art world, a lot of times there's this big stress on archivalness and things lasting for a really long time. And, you know, I've just chosen to work in a more like, I don't know, experiential way where you get to enjoy it for a certain amount of time and then it's gone, you know.
I'm Janet Kawada, and you can find me at janetkawada.com. I'm a fiber artist and mixed media sculptor. I live in Brookline and I show all over New England. So this is Collected Breath. It's made out of window screening, metal window screening. And I use the screening because it talks about both fragility and strength. So the screening in and of itself, it has no inherent strength, rigidness. You couldn't just make it stand. But once you form it into a cube, it has some strength. So then you have 1 cube has a certain amount of strength. 10 cubes would have more strength. And by the time you have this many, you have a community. So what you have is something that is made up of fragile parts, but together it has a lot of strength, and it's the color comes from the kind of the collected breath, the inspiration that you have, and the quietness of the community, but the force of it at the same time. In my work, I look at both the duality of fragility and strength, because we all have that within us, ourselves. You could have the inner strength and maybe the outer fragility in the movement, or you could be frail inside, but you can put on a kind of a face of strength and whatever, and you never know what's going to come out. And so my work talks about that. It's also time-based work, and that it takes time. It's slow. It's all made by hand, and it takes time to do it. So I had to get a roll of screening, and you cut out the form. It's a 6-sided square. I stitched all the squares together with kind of a very fine monofilament, which is a clear thread. And then I put the blocks together, and all the blocks are actually sewn together. So as a community, there's a kind of a thread that goes through the whole thing.
My name's Ted Castro. I went to Pratt Institute and graduated in 1993. The title of my piece is Privilege. It's a 2-position sculpture. In this position, it has one meaning, and it also goes upright, and it changes the meaning. So we can put it upright. And it gives a different point of view. It's made of Indiana limestone. I carved it with hammers, chisels, and sandpaper. Somebody that I know used to work at St. John the Divine, and he gifted me a couple pieces. This is the first piece that I've carved with limestone. I have not carved any more either. I would say that I'm mostly a sculptor, but I do lots of drawings, and I use clay for modeling. Oh yeah, Old Frog Pond Farm. They started having a nice art walk back here, and I've shown my work here a few times.
Hi, I'm Kevin Duffy, and I'm a sculptor. I work mostly in stone. This is granite. Well, this piece is fairly recent, so it has a working title, and I'm not quite sure The process of this piece is a little different than many of the other pieces I make, and in being that it was a completed piece, these two separate pieces were actually conjoined at one point, and I was working on them, but it just wasn't quite what it could be. And so I separated them by cutting them after carving them and repolishing certain areas and placing them here. And I really didn't know what to title it, so kind of became, somebody remarked it seemed to be serpent-like, snake-like, due to the texture being like a reptile skin. So it's kind of its working title is Ophidian Object, which is Ophidian is snake-like. So that's kind of what that is. I'm not sure I agree that that should be its permanent title. I don't know, but my process of this piece, I do a lot of different types of sculpture and commissioned work, and where I have to be very attentive to what it's going to be and what it's going to look like throughout the process. This is one where the process just kind of carried me along. So it started out as one idea, and it transitioned into something else. And this is what more of a freewheeling piece. Let me say that with also some technique in there. I'm using some of the same techniques I would use in any piece of sculpture, and so it just kind of carried me along to its point of completion. And that's for me, and I think a lot of other people also. It's the process that outweighs the end result. The end result. It's a different relationship, but when you're really working on it, you're really immersed in that particular piece. So I'm still adjusting to it being finished, because I lived with it for being unfinished for 4 years, and it was nagging me for a long time, and finally it came to a conclusion. I was just able to pick it up and finish it, and that's how it goes sometimes, if we're fortunate. I'm more connected with it while it's unfinished, because I'm still involved in the process of creating it. So that's that creative part, and that ebbs and flows. So as you know, sometimes most pieces I don't have to let go for 4 years to find the solution. But this is until I do find the solution. Yeah, it's a very, very intimate relationship to a certain point, and then afterwards, it's released out there, and it almost doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to whoever the viewer is that happens to be looking at it at that particular time. So it becomes a different relationship, but it's most intense and most involved in the actual creative process. Yeah, very much so. Yes, mostly I was trained more as a painter in order to support. I've worked as a technical illustrator in the high-tech field for many years around here in the 495 area. And I most recently, in the last 23 years, have worked as a stone conservator, monument and public art conservator. Some of the same elements, and I work with a lot of granite, a lot of marble, and that's been basically, so between the three of them, I think they're all intertwined one way or the other. That's what my work is, and when I do work, it's usually as a sculptor, drawing and sculpting. You know, my art speaks through its own voice. I'm just kind of the body that makes it. I don't really know what that is. And so very often it's kind of difficult to talk about as a visual artist, to talk about my art. Somebody once very simply compared it to asking a writer to make a painting of their book. You know, it's just, it's difficult. So yeah, to put it into words is I don't really have much more to say in that regard, except that I appreciate people coming by and getting their feedback. So I think I'll let it rest with that.